even when I gave my self permission to ask for help, that literally is I'm hopefully not alone in this, right? There's a willingness to not be trying to fight that fight in your own little chamber, like your own little silo of misery and pain and regret and shame and guilt. The second you're willing to kind of look out the window and look for that help, it can change things.
Stories are powerful.
Welcome to the Rise, Recover, Live podcast, brought to you by The Phoenix. This is a space where people impacted by substance use can come to share their story of strength and resilience, get open and honest, and inspire hope and build community through shared experience.
We'll be talking to people in our community on their own recovery journey and shine a light on the topic of recovery in all its forms. Maybe you'll hear some of your story in theirs.
Let's show the world that together we rise, recover, and live.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of the Rise, Recover, Live podcast. We are your hosts, Bryce III, he, him pronouns.
Liz McKean, she, her pronouns.
What up, Liz?
Nothing. Hi. Still recovering from pouring my water bottle onto my lap a few moments ago, but it's cool. We got this.
So apparently we're learning for the first time again how to drink water bottles on this show.
Daily occurrence. Yeah, I can tell you. I go through multiple costume changes throughout my day because of my spilling my habits of spilling.
Nothing like a little spill to keep you alert and aware of what you're doing.
I know. There's some things like that like in, the days of addiction, it was just like, oh yeah, I'm clumsy, I spill things, I break things, all those things that turns out had nothing to do with the drinking or just who I am as a human. And, now I get to just love myself anyways.
Well, I'm glad you love you because we love you. And we also want to love your choice for food last night. What did you order from the delivery service?
Ooh, pizza. I had pizza last night, actually. It was delicious.
What? From where?
It's a place called Swan Dive. And yeah, it's like you can walk there from where we live, which is pretty cool.
But you still ordered.
Yeah. Well, we picked it up, though. Oh, so actually, I don't really meet the criteria because we
because you used your legs and picked it up. So, but you still ordered it.
My husband's legs to pick it up.
Wait, you got on Billy's back as he walked you to the pizza place?
Sure didn't. I cheered him on from the couch.
Wow.
He was my Uber Eats. Yeah.
Well, cool.
Yeah. How are you doing today?
I am good. It's rainy, but it has been sunny for the past couple of days, and so this rain feels good. I just planted some flowers out in the garden, so they're getting some sustenance. And nice. I'm ready to jump into this conversation with our guest today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just read our guest description that he sent in.
Yeah, he's got a cool bio.
Yeah, I mean, how could I not read this? I mean,
I know, it's very legit.
Usually I pass it on to you or I'd have the guest intro, but I just want to read this, right? So Bryan Wempen is an acclaimed author and speaker, fearlessly redefining normal and inspiring personal growth. With his new groundbreaking book, Fuck My Demons, Redefining Normal, Bryan challenges stigmas, empowering audiences to embrace imperfections and reclaim their power. From a diverse technology, healthcare, and entrepreneurial background, Bryan offers a unique perspective, blending raw honesty and humor in his captivating talks. Join him in his writing on a transformational journey of self-discovery and messy resilience. I really like that. Breaking free from limitations and embracing authenticity.
Whew.
With all that said, so we were doing some technical things earlier before we started, and Bryan showed me his thing his audio interface, and it has like a laugh track on it. If I had a laugh track or an applause track, I'd just hit it right now.
The crowd goes wild.
But with all that being said, what's up, Bryan? How are you?
Hey, good afternoon, I guess. Happy Thursday. Doing great. I'm really excited to visit with both of you. Huge fan of all the really amazing conversations and what you're doing for the recovery community, because the conversation and stories and how we navigated that is about what recovery is all about, right? And so I just really appreciate everything you all are doing on a consistent basis.
Thank you. That feels good to hear. And also, we couldn't do it without people like you showing up and sharing your experience, strength, and hope. And the people listening to the podcast who tune in on a weekly basis to hear new stories and maybe one day become a guest. So, where are you coming from? You said good afternoon, maybe.
I had to look. So I'm in Mountain Time. I'm in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
So is it like desert?
We're high desert, so we're at 7,000 feet. So doesn't get too warm and doesn't get too cold. More than a few weeks a year. It's a nice place to live.
Nice. So if Goldilocks walked into your city, she'd be like perfect.
Dude, she would never leave. It's a great, people are nice. It's a cool place, not really big, so you don't have traffic to contend with. And everybody's pretty chill. Again, so put it on your bucket list. It's a good place to visit and a great place to live.
Nice. Yeah, I'm marking it down right now. I think so. Before we press record, you talked about some of the other places you lived, and we'll get deeper into your story. But on a rank of all the places that you've been at, what is some of the top spaces that you've found spoke to your spirit?
Wow, I've never had anybody ask me that question before. God, they're so different. It's, so I've lived in I've lived in Atlanta for a long time. I grew up in the Midwest, lived in Atlanta, lived in Kansas City, lived in Portland, lived in San Francisco, spent time in Puerto Rico, spent time in the UK in Manchester and Oxford. I really enjoyed, like, my time in Atlanta was very special because I was, it was the first big city that I ever lived in. So I went from growing up on a ranch in an incredibly not diverse area in the Midwest in Nebraska to working in the absolute heart of Atlanta, right? And it was one of the biggest, like, growth experiences of my life and it was so much, like, every day, like every single day. It was, I was learning something new about myself, and, living in the South, is a different experience, and living in a really big city, Atlanta's, it moves at a pace. And so, but really enjoyed my time there. But overall, to answer your question, I absolutely loved spending time in the UK. Like, I really enjoyed England. It was, again, part of that learning curve on that the world is a very big place. I was pretty young. I was in my late 20s and was a typical, not to stereotype, but I think if it's accurate, it's probably accurate stereotype, is Americans think that America is everything, and we tend to Americanize things. And once I got there and figured out the world was such a big place, I really got another chapter in education, the fact that, it's not all about, the US and its 50 states, right? There's a much bigger theme out there that if you're open to it, that you can learn and embrace. And I really just, I loved being over there.
How dare you stereotype, Bryan? This is America.
How dare you? How dare you show us who we are? We're so young, too. The other thing that I think is so wild about, those European, far more than just the European countries, but just is like they have history that goes, from way before we were around. And so it's wild. I guess it's almost like immaturity to just be like, the world didn't exist before us. And then we just created the world, like this is what it was, and then it's so not the case.
Even spiritually, like I remember when I went to Montreal, and I showed up, and the first language there is French. And so my
Do
first
yell at everybody,
reaction,
say, talk
my first
English.
reaction was anger. Like, why would they put signs like this? And they know I'm here and I got to find how to park. And like, what is wrong with y'all? But then it was like a shell shock to my spirit. Like, oh, and me and Liz, one of the things she points out is that like when we first met, I shared, because we had met in Vegas. We met in the middle of the Mojave Desert. It was just the two of us. No, I went out to the Mojave Desert and I
Gotta
saw
make it
these
weird,
mountains.
man.
I saw these mountains and I just shared with her, like, I like to feel small in a good way, and big mountains will do that. And that was another moment of like, oh, like not only am I small, but like the culture and citizenship that I belong to is just a small piece of the bigger picture. And it was like, whoa, it was very humbling.
That is, something you said that's super interesting, and it's something that I've recently been saying that I've acknowledged is I absolutely love being the minority in situations. That to me, I have some of the best times in my life when I go to either culturally a minority or ethnically a minority. Because like New Mexico, my wife is Mexican American, and so we came out here partly because like it's 71% of New Mexico is Hispanic Spanish and Hispanic Spanish Mexican. And I absolutely love, walking in the restaurant and she gets to see everybody walking in with dark hair, right? Like it's those little things. And I absolutely love that. Like, because like I like feeling like that smallness, like where I have to adapt and I have to learn and I have to be open to embrace that. I absolutely thrive in that. I think it's so much fun and I just get excited about it. And I've always, whether it's Native American or it's, again, like we go now to Mexico or Mexico City is we've started going down like last year, we'll go again this year. And I mean, that's a big city at 20 million people. And it is, obviously it's in Mexico. First language is Spanish. I don't speak Spanish. I understand like 3 words. And,
Okay.
like bathroom, bathroom, beer, which is kind of funny because I'm in recovery, and job, right? So I figure if I got to make money, I got to use the bathroom, or I want to take full, if I want to start drinking again, I got 3 things in my portfolio relative to Spanish. So I see that as an opportunity, right? That I can expand my language capability, and I don't have the ear for language, so it's just doesn't stick. So I have to work on it very intentionally. So, but I like your comment. I love that, and I found that to be really exciting, especially in recovery, because that being uncomfortable is where I grow, and it used to be with pain. I used to grow out of pain. And that was stick. And I knew that to be very comfortable was just feeling uncomfortable because of pain or consequence or anticipating consequence. And that's progressed now to where I avoid pain in a different way by doing the next right thing, by setting intention, by being a participant in my life, right? And so now I try and grow out of being uncomfortable because I got things to do, right? I got ways to grow and I need to be open. So it's that paradigm shift between healthy and unhealthy, right? And so yeah, great. But I really appreciate the share on that. Weird or not?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think these are the tools that we pick up and the experiences that we have. Like we learn because especially when it comes to like addiction, alcoholism, like things that could be not as loud or a thorn in the side of someone who doesn't have uh, uh, a challenge with finding ways to cope and show up for life, might not work as hard to develop tools and processes to be able to show up for life how life is versus how we want it to be. And life is going to give us a ton of opportunity to show up in the midst of what's going on, even if it's not what we desire to be happening. And so I think, I just want to kind of get into your story, Bryan, because if we're talking about your book and even some of the stuff that you shared thus far, it seems like you've cultivated a lot of processes and a lot of skills. But I know stuff like that doesn't just come from reading it on a page. That's hard earned. So, where'd you come from? How'd you get here?
Yeah, no, and again, I'm excited to have this. I'm excited to have the conversation. I love talking with people in recovery because that hopefully that some of the really dark, unpleasant things are behind and we survived. So we can kind of get right to it and have real conversations, I think, at a much easier pace and laugh about things that are tragic and humiliating. And, literally people are like, oh, I couldn't come back from that. It's like, well, you can, right? I mean, you just got to do the work, like you're saying, and be humble and find tools and dig into your community, help people. I mean, all those things. And so yeah, my story has some uniqueness, and for the most part, it's not super unique, right? I kind of started out. Actually, it's some of the interesting parts is I was adopted at birth from Silicon Valley, so I was born in Redwood City, California, and at 2 days old was adopted and went from Silicon Valley, which it wasn't Silicon Valley back then, but from the Bay Area to Wyoming,
Wow.
right? So very, very different. It's where my parents were from. Grew up there, and I think things were pretty normal till about 5, and then we moved to a farm or a ranch in Nebraska to the Midwest, and because both my parents, my mother is a third or fourth generation, ranch woman, and my dad always wanted to do that, and so we had this ranch, and we went from all my family to being totally isolated.
Oh, wow.
Right? So I think that's where, in a lot of reflection over the years. So I've been in recovery. I haven't did drugs for about 28 years. That was kind of my first step in recovery, and then have been sober from alcohol for about 13 and a half years, just to give some context. So anyway, yeah, so it's interesting. Everything seemed really normal up to that point. And then when we got out and really got isolated and just started navigating a lot of stress from my parents having a business, and, farming and ranching is really hard because you're kind of at the mercy of a lot of things, right? Mother Nature, the markets you don't control, you're managing disease. I mean, you have all these things that you're trying to keep your animals alive, all that stuff. And so I grew up in a very small area, rural area, kind of got into school, and it was probably I was 8 or 9 before I started, playing with secrecy, right? Lying about things and trying to, I see that now as these were some attempts to kind of control what was going around me that I could control, right? Which was information. And that's kind of where it started. And it just sort of progressed a bit. And I was always just nice enough and just smart enough and just funny enough that I could stay out of trouble, right? Because I was just, again, in school, did fairly well, and was, again, just wasn't on the bottom half of the list, so I didn't get in a lot of trouble there, and was pretty good at sports. I really kind of embraced that. Was the first connection that I had. So I was just good enough at sports to kind of stay out of trouble there, and had a little bit of place to fit in. But and occasionally was sneaking drinks and was bartending for my uncles when they would get together for Christmas and things like that. Just all these just kind of normal little kid things, I guess. But the very first time when I was 14 that I had an opportunity to literally drink with zero accountability, like nobody telling me not to do it, was the very first time that I ever blacked out. I drank till I, got sick, blacked out, started a fight, got sick again, you name it. And then that was really where it all started, because after I got over the incredibly bad hangover, I was so excited. I couldn't wait to do that again.
Oof.
And so I started chasing how to externally change how I felt. Like, I now had this new tool. And when that happens with a lot of folks, and I've probably talked to 2 or 3 thousand people in recovery over the last 13, 14 years. And there's a lot of uniqueness in when you now have like your main focus and you're changing how you feel externally, you just stop doing a lot of things, right? Like your hobbies, your dreams, your curiosity all stop. It just gets paused because you're so focused on, trying to have that
It's about how
feeling
you
where
feel, yeah.
you don't have all that negative things looping,
Yeah.
right? And so that's where it started. And then I, again, progressed. By the time I was 16, I was a daily drinker. And
Bryan, can I just for a second, let's put a pin in the 16.
Yep.
But I think you touched on something very important. Like when the main focus becomes chasing a feeling, when the main purpose becomes altering my states of mood, we drop a lot of other things. There is no room or opportunity for self-discovery, because the goal from the moment I wake up is making sure that I feel this way. And if anybody listening to this podcast, and I'm sure both of you know how fickle an emotion is. I can feel like doing something, 2 minutes later, I don't feel like doing it anymore. I could be excited, and then that can turn into grief, and then that can turn into anger, and then that can turn into frustration, and then that can turn into appreciation in a matter of 5 minutes. And this just happened yesterday. And so, but there was a time, and who am I kidding? There's times today where it's like, but I really want to feel like this, or the sun's out, so I should be this way, or, I'm in this space, or, they've trusted me with running this event in this way, or, I'm their dad and that's a role. And so I have to show up this way and can't show that I'm feeling these things. And when my focus is the feelings, then everything else, like being the good dad, knowing what my why is, knowing how to show up and be able to contribute to the space in alignment with what it is that I said that I desire, all those things fall to the wayside.
The doing and the being takes a backseat.
Yeah.
Well, and that's where the sayings get very profound, like feelings aren't facts. It too shall pass. Do the next right thing. I mean, there's all these little, first when you get into recovery, all these little weird catchphrases that are a bit annoying
I was
when
just
you
gonna
don't
say,
really
'cause when
want
you
to
said
hear
all three
them.
of those, I'm like, shut up, Bryan. Each one of them, don't say one more.
And it's there's such a level of profundity. I don't get to say that very often.
That's a good one. Good word.
But they come there, you have like, okay, I got to grab a hold of that for a second, because I need to put it into my toolkit of how to manage that process, right? Because I hear you, right? Because there's levels of times, whether maybe didn't get enough sleep or stressed about whatever, or I've created this narrative in my head that is probably not true because somebody didn't text me back. I mean, who knows? I mean, it doesn't take a lot, because we as a general population are fairly sensitive beings, right? And we're just getting dialed into how to put that through a filter that's very positive, right? That's the good thing. Good sensitive that used to be bad sensitive, where we'd react to everything, and now we get to respond, right? But I love those now. Not always, but I do love some of those phrases, because they give me a framework to grab onto when I have a little bit of wobble, like in the emotional category, which is way more, right? Like the living part, living life part is messy. It can be, volatile. It can be beautiful. It can be, somewhat pragmatic, and that all can happen, like you said, in 5 minutes. Like just run the gamut, and then get to it. Like, okay, I'm all right. I'm all right. And then you just move on with your day, and I can let it go, and I don't have to beat myself up because I had this massive reaction for 5 minutes, which it used to be that might take me completely off the rails for, weeks
Yeah.
because I couldn't let it go and I had no tools to deal with
Yeah,
it. So
yeah. There's so much there because this is a process a bit specific to people in recovery. And as I continue to live, I've discovered how unique this is not to recovery. Like I got people in my life that are having these super not sensitive, emotional experiences that are new, and they're learning how to build process around it, and to watch them dance with like giving themselves space and compassion to break down, be frustrated, be mad, be angry, be envious, be jealous, be sad, and then show up, dissect it, and learn how to integrate new process. Like, I think that comes with showing up and intentionally maturing. I'm watching Ted Lasso right now. It's the best freaking show in the world. Don't spoil it because I'm on like season 1, episode 8. Oh my God, this is such a great show. And he says something to one of the older players. He says, people say that youth is wasted on the young. And I was like, I heard that before, but I just heard it differently when he said that. And he was like, don't let the wisdom of age be wasted on you. And I'm like, And I think this intentional process, this intentional dance with learning ourselves, having these expulsions, and showing up for what comes out in compassion and building process, like that's how we cultivate wisdom, whether you're in recovery or not. And what I've learned is that like that process allows for us to show up for more people, show up for more places, and more of the unpredictable in a way that allows for us to exemplify grace and wisdom.
It sounds like that messy resilience that's
really
just been
like that.
sticking with me in your bio there, Bryan. I think that messy resilience. I mean, the resilience can't really come without the messiness, and but it's easy to get caught up in the messiness and drop the resilience part of it. So like having those two together is like the only way that it works.
And some people will think that resilience is exclusive and doesn't have any messiness in it. And if messiness shows up in my resilience, I'm doing it wrong. And it's
right.
It's like, oh, no, no.
So true.
I've got a friend real quick that he calls it, and I totally and shamelessly use the term all the time, called ugly grace.
It's great.
His name's Adam Martin. He's up and he runs a couple different recovery programs up in Fargo, North Dakota. Big advocate for the community, has done so much. But yeah, ugly grace, and I just love that. Absolutely love that phrase.
Makes me think of it's a Glennon Doyle phrase that life being both beautiful and brutal, and it's brutal. Life being brutal. I've described a few moments in my life about that, like, oh, this is just brutal, just because there's just everything is just a combination of it all.
Yeah. Well, it's like the statue of the Buddha that is that Ram Dass describes as having this look on his face, and it's like he's almost smiling, but it's like his face is in pain, but he's smiling. It's like the statue of unbearable compassion.
Wow, man, there's so many. I'm like, how will we pick a title for this episode is my question. Oh my gosh.
I love it.
Well, I love it. I love these episodes where we get to go
All
down
right.
these.
Well, I wanted to take a pit
these
stop
roads.
there just because I wanted to pull it out. But if you want to go
that's
back
great.
to when you were 16, let's hop back in. Back
Sure.
on track.
Yeah.
No, and I appreciate you doing that. It's such a good conversation, right? Because there's just a lot of people that have to find things to identify, right? I don't care if you're in
Mhm.
recovery or you're navigating, emotional well-being or something with mental health, because it could be, and that could all start with grief and loss. I mean, there's so many different things that happen, just ongoing stress from work. I mean, there's a lot of things that put people in places that either don't feel good and then over time become chronic, right? And become into
Yeah.
something bigger. And so it's just good. It's just good to talk about that. So,
Mhm.
so yeah, 16, and I was really good. I've always been good at my facade and my masking. And so I was able to hide that daily drinking. Literally, time I got to school, was hiding stuff in my locker and wasn't doing drugs yet, thank God. And so they weren't really around that I saw, but I was really chasing how to feel better, right? How to feel different.
Yeah.
And I thought it was better, but it was different. So, was just ready to graduate. Like I said, was a decent, always a decent student. Graduated early, went into the Army National Guard. So I went to basic training when I was 17. Didn't drink for 5 months, except for, the one day we got off in the middle of it. Me and about four guys went and got totally wasted. Got a hotel room, bought like four cases of alcohol, and just got trashed. So that was the one thing that I did, and the one day that I wasn't there. But I didn't really drink other than that for 5 months, and so I
Wow.
thought things would be probably a little different when I got back. Before I got accepted into university, and so got back, and so I was just working all summer. And it took me about 2 weeks and I was right back where I left, right? And I was working and drinking, working and drinking, working and drinking. That was pretty much it was a fantastic summer because that's all I was doing. No school to get in my way and take up my time. I was just working and drinking. And then I went to university, and guess what? Working and drinking, and occasionally going to class. Then, when I was 18, I got to college. I found drugs, and that was the HOV lane to destruction. So I worked. I had 3 jobs. Was in National Guard for the next 5 years. Was doing every drug that didn't come out of a needle. I hate needles, thank goodness. And so that's the one thing that I absolutely didn't do because I just was so terrified of that. And I don't think it was really around. I'm a little naive probably, so I was, drinking and using everything I could possibly get to feel differently. And about 4 years into it, everything really started to unwind at a pace that was not manageable anymore. Like it was, again, I always worked. Luckily, I kind of grew up in a very hardworking family. So I always had 3 jobs and I was always hustling money or whatever. But it just progressed and had an overdose when I was 22. So I was 4 years into it. And that scared the shit out of me. That actually, I thought, drugs might actually kill me. I never thought about alcohol. I thought that was just what you did. And so I'm like, I better slow down or try and stop that. And I couldn't stop. And so the only reason I think partially that I stopped is because I graduated and I moved to a different state. So it was a good geographic. It cut off all ties with because I knew I needed to stop the drug part because again, one, it was super illegal, and two, it was probably going to kill me. And so I moved, and luckily that stopped. And I only did it one other time, and then I figured out like it wasn't what like I don't need to do that. So I stopped. 1996 actually, last time I ever did drugs. And I was a speed guy. Really didn't smoke much weed or anything like that. I would just look idiotic if I did. And so I was definitely, meth, coke, alcohol, ecstasy, acid, shrooms, hash. Kind of just go down the list, maybe all of it in a night, who knows? And so, but I definitely, I got done with that, and then I just drank twice as much. Like my drinking
Mhm.
picked up, and then and in that time, got married, stumbled into a weird career that in Atlanta, which is big, and you can be a bit anonymous in your negative behaviors. And then got some success in a career that I was starting to make quite a bit of money, and then I became a problem solver because I had a high risk tolerance, so I didn't care. So I would go into bad situations for this company and I would solve problems. And I was kind of good at that. So they sent me again. I was Puerto Rico, the UK, my first time around. So I've been there a couple times in different careers. And then I was on the West Coast in Portland, and then in San Francisco, and then back in Atlanta. And was just making every step of the way. I had built a team that would protect me and fix my problems, right? Because
Mm.
I was just a mess, absolute mess. I was miserable. I was making a significant amount of money in my late 20s, which didn't really help the situation because
Mhm.
I had success, so I was really buying into my own PR partially, and then I had a ton of money, so that increases access.
I'm just wondering because I feel like we see this a lot, and I feel like this played out in a slightly different way in my life, where it's like when you're able to have success and do well and still be fun and funny, and people like you and they can see that you're working. It's amazing how long we can go on just killing ourselves, and no one dares say anything to you, because how could they? Clearly you have your life together. So I'm wondering, you were making a mess, you were miserable, like at any point did someone say like, hey dude, like get it together, or did you just appear to be together?
Um, I think this just came up kind of recently. I think people have, over the years, they've tried to intervene and they've tried to say things,
Yeah.
and I just don't, and because I honestly don't remember that anybody did that, and I can't believe that. I was around too many good people, but I just don't remember somebody just kind of grabbing me and going, you're gonna die. Like your
Yeah.
behavior is going to catch up with you, and it's all going to come crashing down. And that goes, it's interesting because, I had several, I haven't really brought it up. I had several arrests throughout those years, that I threw a lot of money at the problem and I made the problem go
Mm,
away. Right.
yeah.
And that,
Yeah.
and that was momentary. I'd have a few weeks of feeling god awful and hating myself, and I got to change. And then, I went back to my very comfortable coping skills. And that cycle just continued, and finally got to a point that it's like, okay, I can't do this career anymore. It was a really unhealthy company, like just doing some really bad, illegal things, and just toxic, very toxic place. So I kind of ended up leaving there, but that didn't stop. And in that time, I actually got exposed to the 12-step programs, to AA. So I knew somebody that was, got in recovery. So I would occasionally go to, like in Atlanta, like in the South, or at least in Atlanta or in Georgia, they have what's called eating meetings, where you got a monthly, people are getting their chip and they're celebrating a birthday and it's potluck. And it's so funny because it gives me goosebumps because I was years from being in recovery, but I went with somebody to go to those. And it's the only place that I actually felt calm and connected with people and myself for years. I was so excited to go to those because I felt at home and I didn't even know it. Like I enjoyed him so much. It's just bizarre how the universe works. And I can remember so clearly, like good times. I can't remember so much of all those years. because I was just in so much, I was so miserable and I was so in myself about, whatever and, anesthetize about lots of things. And so I don't remember anything, but I remember all those meetings.
Wow.
And it's just so interesting. So I got exposure along the way and ended up, an entrepreneur. So I'd started a couple companies, and somebody that I had met was in recovery as we moved. And so I've lived in one place I didn't mention. I lived in Tulsa, Oklahoma for about 10 or 11 years. And I'd met somebody, and he was in recovery, and he was such a great guy. And he had one hell of a story. Oh my God. Talk about burning your life down multiple times. But he was really open about it, and just talking about it, super smart, and just living life, right? And so I knew that, and he was always really gracious, more gracious than he should have been. I was a total shit friend, terrible business partner, because I was so self-absorbed and into myself, at that time,
Mhm.
fully
Well,
raging.
and you had been lying. Like you said you had been, you had picked up like that lying kind of habit of as a way of control since you were, I mean, under the age of 10. And now here you are, full grown adult and, having had success in that. So, I mean, it kind of makes sense that
Sure.
this is the person you are, and also that you're kind of attracted to the opposite, that when you're in those meetings and it's like people are telling the truth, it's the first time you've had experience with that. And it's like the first time you've exhaled probably. So anyways, continue.
No, but that you're exactly right. Is it was interesting on how much I connected with the opposite, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
do, like I definitely was very comfortable in the darkness of the world. That felt very natural, and volatility and manipulation and just like super dark shit. Like I navigated that very comfortably for a very, very long time. And then conversely, I was really connected in a very real way to the complete opposite, to your point. So I had always was kind of trying to grasp for how to reconnect with, spirit, right? I'll call it my spirit, right? Because I just didn't, that was there was such a void there for so long about what I thought about myself. And I call it self-abandonment. It's something I've been working on recently, is really defining what self-abandonment looks like, and the why behind it and everything. And so kind of progress a bit. Went back to the UK, a whole different career, was back there. And then you kind of fast forward a little bit, and I come to the very last day, right? And it really progressed because in Georgia, I had a DUI when I lived there and got out of it. But part of it is if I ever had another one, it was going to be a felony. Like it didn't exist unless I got a second one. And it was a loophole in the law at that time. So I was very dialed into like, I can't ever let that happen again. And so I typically didn't drive. But the last 2 months, I started, driving, under the influence again and blackouts. Like just it progressed. I crossed the line of not caring.
Oh yeah, you do the things that you swear you'd never do. That line
Yeah.
always gets pushed.
And the line kind of hit where I'm like, hell with it. I don't care. I don't care if people, like, I don't care if my colleagues in the industry see me completely, wasted and doing just really bad behavior and driving in a blackout. Like the last 60 days, like I knew that I was kind of starting to really hit the gas as hard as I could again, right? Not just miserable, but not caring, right? No hope.
Hmm.
And cross that line. It's a weird line that when you cross, you go from being miserable to not caring at all, is a very different
Yeah,
line. And
yeah,
and so it progressed to where, the very last day wasn't my worst day. That's the weirdest thing, is I just something clicked, and I did some things that, that since I've made amends for, and people are like, dude, it wasn't that big a deal. Right. But I was like, I think it's the precursor to like everything blowing up, and people will know who I am. And so something clicked where like something's got to change. I can't tell you what it was. Again, it wasn't the worst day. But when it clicked, I was so unhappy. I was in Chicago actually. and was at an event I was speaking at back then, and I literally felt so bad, and just broke down in the cab to the airport. This day, I'm sure that cab driver's like, I don't know what's going on back there, but he is losing it. And so I finally got back home, and I called the guy that I knew, right, who had been in my life for 7, 8 years, and I called him and said, I need some help. Like, I don't know who else to call. I trust you. I need some help. Can you help me? And he's like, yeah. Can you make it till tomorrow and just not drink? Right. And I said, yeah, I can. And then we met the next day at a coffee shop, and he kind of told me all of his story and kind of what he does on a regular basis. And that started the process, right? And I listened to him, and he's like gave me a bunch of options and things to think about because he knew me. And I listened, and then I just sort of did what he told me, and I found other people that I connected with. And I love that I heard this one time in a recovery meeting, that somebody said that they had to latch on to something to have some hope around and love, because they hated themselves so much. They couldn't do it for themselves because they didn't care about themselves, right? They had just enough willingness to try, but they could care less about the vessel, right? There was nothing there. And that resonated with me. So I would latch on to people who had, a day more recovery, an hour more recovery, or, 50 years, didn't matter. If they were, and I listened, and I still to this day in my wallet carry a piece of paper that somebody had me write down. Um, still chokes me up a little bit. Had me write down that I would do anything possible to beat this thing and stay in recovery. And I still carry that very tattered, scotch taped piece of paper that's been lost and found and washed, over the last, 13 and a half years, almost 14 years. I still carry it with me every single day. I see it every time I pull out a credit card or my ATM card or a business card. I see it there. And it's just a reminder that, I've got to keep doing this, right? And I'm happy to keep doing it. I love being in recovery. I have no regrets about where I am, because I'm the human being that I probably always, the people that I admired, that I thought were good folks in the past. Like, I think that would help people, and were very kind and generous, and seemed to have some wisdom. A lot of them, had the skills that I had never gained when I was younger. And so I now aspire to be that, try and be that person. And that's why I write the books, is I want people to see that, we all don't have a linear, nice, neat little path. Life is really messy. And if you're honest, and you want to be, a participant in humanity and as we know it, then we absolutely, need to share the good and the bad, right? The bumpy and the smooth. I mean, it can't be one way. Like, it just can't.
Yeah.
That's not the human experience.
No, that's beautiful, Bryan. I think that is a perfect place to kind of like transition into the book and a little bit of the content that people can expect when they pick up the book. Is it available now already?
Yeah, it came out. Thank you for asking. So it came out January 1st. I was trying to drop it in a very intentional time when people were looking
Happy
to
New
change.
Year.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, so it's kind of my 18 to today part of my recovery story. My previous book, called Sober is Better, is kind of 0 to 18 years, give or take. And this one's kind of 18 to today. Has a lot more about life. And I didn't intend to write it. I was really like, I'm kind of done. I said everything I was going to say. But after the pandemic and and what the world went through, and such dramatic energy shifts and everything. I'm like, I think I do have a little more to say. But now I think I've said I might be 70 before I write another one, because I think I've
Yeah,
said
right.
everything. Yeah, I know. I
Yeah,
know.
right.
So
5 years
my
from
so
now,
my
I
wife
got more
said
to
too.
say.
She's like, right,
They
right.
keep calling me back in.
Oh, it's
So, but
great. Well, we need that though, like the way you speak, Bryan, and the way you like just find words that, gosh, do you ever hear I feel like I'm having a deja vu moment. So sorry, podcast listeners, if I've said this literal actual thing before, but there's words in German that, like, every once in a while, somebody like, oh, there's a word for that in German, that feeling that you're trying to describe. That I will never have heard the word, but it'll be like there's not a literal translation, but it's a feeling that, like, oh my God, now that I have a word for it, I just like, I don't know why it just feels better. Even like, I don't know, I really can't even put words to what I'm experiencing right now, but there's been a few things you said and things that are in your actual, bio, like that messy resilience is a really good example where it's like, it's like that first time you go into a meeting and you hear your story reflected back to you and like, holy crap, like this, it's like this validating permission slip to just, be in that moment. And I think, I'm excited to read your book because just if it's anything like the way you speak and from what I've seen, just even, a couple of your blog posts that I've read, it's like, yeah, like it's just like an exhale, so please keep writing. Don't make us wait till 70. Come on.
well, and the way that I describe kind of, and thank you, that was such a good articulation for the way that I describe that is there's moments that I just didn't feel alone anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The permission slip analogy is like when you hear your story, because you thought you were so unique in a very bad way, like you're a
Yeah.
horrible person, and there's not a lot of redemption that's even going to be possible, and nobody's really understands how bad you really are. And then you literally sit down with a room full of strangers, and you're like, oh my God, like that is my story. Like I
Yeah.
identify with like I remember the first time I ever walked into I'm abstinence based. Like I can't light that fuse. Like it just doesn't work. And I've spent a lot of time in the last several years really understanding like harm reduction and other people's path and their journey. So I very much respect all of that if they can do it. I can't. That's not my path. But I remember walking into the first AA meeting, recovery meeting, and the lady was speaking, and I'm like, how could she possibly know exactly who I am? It was so nice to have such a unspoken, like I'd never met her before. I just was listening to her story, just sobbing, in the ninth row back, as far as I could get, so I could get like be out the door if I needed to go. And I just heard, I'm like, oh my gosh, and just heard how she navigated pain and really significant life issues, and was very successful, right? And just talked about the facade, right? It was always so close to burning down. Like the fire was always lit until she figured out how to not light the fire anymore. And then her life wasn't constantly burning down over and over and over again. And so, yeah, the not being alone, like I'm not alone in this, I talk about a lot, because I think there's something that clicks when, even for me, right? I knew I had somebody to call, right? I knew, because he was always there for me, whether he knew it or not. And so even when I gave my self permission to ask for help, that literally is I'm hopefully not alone in this, right? There's a willingness to not be trying to fight that fight in your own little chamber, like your own little silo of misery and pain and regret and shame and guilt. The second you're willing to kind of look out the window and look for that help, it can change things, right? And then you just try to string together the steps. to move you forward out of having, you know, having different experiences using different tools, right? So yeah. So I really appreciate the comment. I have a very quick question, and I know we're running long on time for both of you. So if you're going to write a book, what would that book be?
Bryce is about to go get his book.
Or
Don't let him cheat,
another
Bryan.
book.
Make him write a new one.
Nobody gets
Bryan.
out of it that easy.
I'm glad you
another
asked.
book. Or
I'm glad you
another
asked.
book.
So I've got a couple ideas in the chamber right now. Right now, I'm super focused on, I don't know, just being compassionate with my creativity. So right now, the creativity is coming out in the form of music. I don't know what it is. They're shaping up to be a couple of projects. I'm excited about it. But the one in the chamber, there's a couple. So I've always wanted to write a parable, like the Celestine Prophecy or, the Alchemist or Sacred Journey of the Peaceful Warrior, like something where it's like, okay, this is entertaining and exciting, and it's got these little nuggets in it that can hold you down for life. My life is a parable, right? But I think the other one is kind of in the realm of like compassion, like consistent, resilient compassion for self, which allows for me to pour into the world because I can only give what it is that I have. And the more that I work with people, the more conversations I have with people, I see these commonalities between people's journeys and almost this rough, like I beat myself up in the midst of the journey for not having it figured out. And the comparison of like, I see you and you have it all figured out. And it's like, no, I'm in the rough beating myself up for not having it figured out for where I'm at. Can this be easier? Can we allow for like what can aid and soothe the spirit and allow for the growth? Because if I went outside and like it's springtime and my flowers are starting to bloom, which oh my goodness. But if I went out there and like took a hammer to them, like hurry up and grow faster, that would be counterproductive to the process of unfolding. And so can we treat ourselves in the same manner? So that is a preview to what is marinating, I think would be the next one. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. And congrats on your other book. I will definitely read that. I'm a big reader these days. And I love The Alchemist. Absolutely one of my favorites. So Liz, what about you?
What to order on DoorDash?
Uber Eats, Bryce. Let's see. I don't know. I've always thought I was going to write a book. I've always planned to. I've started and stopped about 100 times. I was like the little kid in like high school that even said, I'm going to be a writer, and I have been, but mostly for other people, and this is not the first time I've thought about this and kind of had this conversation with myself. And I like to, I think in metaphors, I speak in metaphors. That's kind of how I understand the world. And I'm kind of thinking that it would be a story that wouldn't necessarily be about me, but would be some kind of metaphor for me or for what I've experienced. And, so I don't know, but I think it would somehow be like a compilation of metaphors and maybe more fiction than nonfiction.
Nice.
But I'm excited to think about it because it's always
how
been
they got
on the
like
list.
chicken soup for the soul, Liz? Like you should like do like metaphor series. So like, but for like very specific things. So things I need to do around the house. I don't feel like doing it. I don't want to clean my room. I don't want to fold my clothes. You could do metaphors for the chores, right? Or like if I want to get
we love a rhyme.
if I want to get my campfire gang together, and really entertain people, metaphors for the s'mores. It could be so many ways you can go with it, Liz. Let me know if you need publishing.
You're hired.
Or
you can write my
Sure. Never met a board, right? Don't hire.
we
don't
should have
hire
a meet.
me.
We should have an meeting about it.
Don't hire me for that. So yeah.
What a great question, Bryan. My gosh, thanks for asking, man.
I love that everybody has stories, right? Everybody has books. You just have to, I think you have to give yourself permission to think about what could be versus what's all the obstacles in front of you. Think about what could be, right?
Uh-huh.
One last thing I'll share about that. I did another podcast interview, and one of the hosts, I asked the same question. I love asking that question because you get to see kind of how people think and what they're thinking about. And she had probably the single best like actual title for a book potential that I've ever heard. And it was "Excuse Me, I Have to Pee." And it was about how much energy was put into just asking somebody if they could get out of the way to go use the restroom, right? It's giving yourself like space and permission that it's all right to not, it's not an inconvenience to somebody. You just are taking care of yourself by asking for what you want. And I'm like, oh my God, I would buy that. That literally sounds like a movie, right? Like it just
It's
sounds
so
so
good.
good. And I'm like, so yeah, I was like, that's legit. Like that's next level.
So good.
You know,
Oh my gosh. I want to, yeah. Well, I'll buy that book. Let us know when it's out.
I'll buy 10 of those
I'm all
books.
about it.
And because we're super competitive here at the Rise Recover Live podcast, we have a question for you. Bryan, if you can go to the future or to the past and pick any iteration of Bryan and tell him a nugget of advice, a suggestion, or just a word, what iteration would you choose and what would you tell him?
Yeah, super big question. I don't like here's the very long short answer is I don't tend to go backwards too much because I've kind of reconciled the majority of that and I let it just be and I respect the past. And there's only really one thing that I would go back and I would explain to myself that I need to work a lot harder to get knowledge and how to help somebody so that my lack of knowledge doesn't hurt them. And I would figure it out, right? Because it really would potentially change somebody's trajectory for the rest of their life if I could figure it out. And I would feel better that at least I tried in a different way. So that's the one thing that I would tell myself. Like you gotta dig a hell of a lot deeper and you gotta think about it differently. And I basically shake myself into a consciousness state that it would actually pay attention. So yeah, good question.
Nice.
I love that concept. Gosh, I know some very brilliant persons had this quote, but it's about, help when you can. I'm going to butcher it too, but it's like help when you can. And if you can't help, at least don't hurt. That always really resonated with me.
Yeah. Do no harm.
Yeah.
Well, this has been an amazing conversation, Bryan. We appreciate you coming on the show. We appreciate all you all listening, especially if you made it this far. I hope you picked up some nuggets that you can apply in your own life. If anything specific stood out to you, meet us in the Rise, Recover, Live space on the Phoenix app and tell us about it. Everything that was mentioned in this show, including Bryan's book and maybe even Bryce's book, will be in the show notes of this episode. And yeah, man, we love y'all. We really enjoy this thing and we couldn't do it without you. So we will catch you on the next episode of the Rise, Recover, Live podcast.
Thank you both.
So now you're excited. Bryce, Liz, how do I get involved with the Phoenix? Well, my friend, it is super simple. We actually have an app. Head over to the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, or look in the show notes of this podcast, wherever you're listening to or watching this podcast, and go download the Phoenix app.
The Phoenix app makes it so easy to find classes that are near you or to access our virtual class schedule where you can hop on from the comfort of your home. You can also join our groups and have a conversation with someone from the Phoenix community from anywhere in the world. Please make sure that you join the podcast group where you can connect with Bryce and I and other listeners. Everything that you need is in the show notes. You can also head to our website at www.thephoenix.org. And maybe while you're there, you click the volunteer tab and get even more involved.